Hello and welcome back. I'm Karen Sullivan of Soul Symbols, and this is our Friday contemplation. On Mondays, I look at the wider sky, the broad view and the larger pattern, and that archetypal web moving through our collective field. And on Fridays, I come down to the ground, into our lived reality and that felt texture of a pattern. So we will be moving on Fridays into deeper explorations of not only what it means in the sky, but in our bodies, choices, relationships, and in the deeper architecture of life. So get your headphones, put your feet up and enjoy this reflection with me. On Sunday, the 21st of June, it's Summer Solstice. So I've been reflecting and thinking about the Summer Solstice. So I'm going to approach this Friday Muse through several layers. First of all, I'm going to begin with the actual Earth, the astronomy of the moment, because I think the physical reality of the solstice is already full of mystery. Then I'll move on to the ancient human need to mark the sun's turning, so that ancestral knowing that this moment in the year mattered. And then I'll have a look at the astrological symbolism of the Cancer and Capricorn axis, that ancient idea of Cancer as the gateway of the soul into matter and Capricorn as the gateway of the gods. And then finally, I'm going to have a look at the sun sextile to Chiron, and that's newly entered into Taurus. So we'll look at what that might say about the wound of embodiment, the wound and the medicine of being here in a body, on earth, in matter. So because the solstice is such a familiar word, we can easily just move past it really quickly. We all know that phrase, the longest day. We know that in the northern hemisphere, this is the time when the light reaches its peak. The sun's high, the days are stretched out, those fields and gardens are full of life, and there's that sense of blooming, ripening, that outward expression. But when I sit with the solstice more deeply, what really fascinates me is the duality of it. There are two things happening at the same time. Here in the northern hemisphere, we're experiencing the longest day and the shortest night. So the earth is tilted towards the sun and we're receiving more light and warmth, more of that solar presence. But at that very same moment in the southern hemisphere, the earth is tilted away from the sun. So there, it's the winter solstice, the shortest day and the longest night. It's in the depth of darkness. So one planetary movement creates two opposite experiences. We have one earth and sun, one tilt, and yet one half of the world is turned towards the fullness of the light, while the other is turned towards the fullness of darkness. And there's something so simple and practical in that, but it's also deeply mystical. The solstice is caused by the tilt of the earth. It's astronomy, it's observable and measurable. It's a physical thing. And yet that physical fact opens into something more profound, because it shows us that light and dark are never separate stories. They happen together. They're held in one body on the earth in one movement. The mystery is in the tilt. So I'm looking at the fact that where we stand changes what the moment means. From one place on earth, this is the sun sitting in its throne, and from the other, it's the sun at its lowest gate. From one place, the world's opening outward into summer, and from the other, it's withdrawing into winter. Both are true and real. They belong to the same moment. And for me, this is part of what makes solstice such a powerful symbolic threshold. This is a moment of global polarity. The longest day and the longest night are occurring together. The light and the dark are in conversation across the body of the earth. And even here in the northern hemisphere, where the light's at its peak, we know from this point onward the days will slowly begin to shorten. The dark's already beginning its return, and there's no drama or rush in that arrival. It comes almost invisibly, quietly, gradually. It's woven into the very moment of solar triumph. And so the solstice is teaching us something about peaks. At the height of something, the turn has already begun. And when light is reaching its crown, the dark is receiving its first breath. So we have the flower that's fully open with fruiting already beginning. When a cycle reaches its fullness, the next movement is already hidden inside it. And that's true in our lives as well. We're rarely in only one season. Something in us may be at midsummer, visible, expressive, blooming. It can be full of life and heat and confidence, whilst something else may be in midwinter. There can be that quietness, inward, private. We can be grieving or uncertain and waiting. A part of us can be moving toward the sun while the other part is turning towards the dark. The solstice gives us a way of holding that without needing to resolve it. It's saying to us that polarity is part of the nature of things, that light and dark are bound together, and it says that life itself moves through relationship, position, perspective, and it moves through turning. And maybe this is why the ancient people marked this moment. There's something really moving to me about the human need to stand beneath the sky and notice when the sun turns. So long before we had the modern explanations of axial tilt and hemispheres, people felt the significance of this moment in their bodies and in the land. They knew that the path of the sun mattered. Light to them meant warmth, and that meant growth. And the growth meant food, and food was survival. So the sun's journey in this respect for the ancients isn't an abstract idea. It was woven into the fields and animals, the harvest and the health of the community. It was also woven into the rhythm of work, the ritual life of the people. So across cultures, we find this impulse to mark the turning of the year. Stones aligned to the sun and fires lit on hills. They gathered flowers and cut herbs. Communities came together at dawn or dusk. The solstice was a threshold in time, and human beings have always needed thresholds. We need to know where we are in a story. We need to pause at the turning points. We need to say something's changing here. It's beginning to move in another direction. Thresholds, initiation, rites of passage. Many are lost to us now, but the solstice remains just like the megalithic stone structures that mark the astronomy. And I think there's an ancestral knowing in that. Our ancestors might not have spoken about the solstice in the language we use now, but they knew this moment had depth. They knew the sun at its height was not just about a bright day, it was a sacred turning to them, a point of orientation. And it was telling them something about the relationship between heaven and earth. It told them something about the timing of life, when to plant, to gather, to celebrate, when to prepare. The solstice was lived through the body and through the land. That's one of the reasons I find it so important to keep the practical and the mystical together. The solstice isn't made less sacred because it has an astronomical explanation. That explanation makes it even more astonishing. The earth leans, and because of that leaning, the world changes. Our seasons arrive and our crops grow. Our bodies respond, moods shift, rituals form and myths emerge. The physical world becomes symbolic because the physical world is already alive with meaning. And when we move into myth, we find these repeating patterns around the height of light and the beginning of descent. Midsummer often carries images of fire, flowers, fertility, ripening, and that solar power. The sun's radiant. And in myth, the king is crowned, the god is at his height, the land's lush and abundance. There's a sense of fullness here. But also, in many seasonal myths, the peak is also fragile. The one who is radiant carries a vulnerability, and a crowned figure will eventually yield. And that bright god has a shadow near him. So the fire is burning at its strongest, and because it burns, it will also consume itself. The Oak King and the Holly King are useful symbols here, especially as a seasonal myth of waxing and waning power. The Oak King reaches his height at midsummer, and that represents growing, green, expansive force of the year. But at the same moment, the Holly King begins to gain strength, and the Holly King is carrying the darker, inward, evergreen half of the year. Whether we treat that as old folklore, modern pagan symbolism, or poetic seasonal imagination, it's given us a really helpful image. The King of Light is crowned at the very moment the Dark King begins to rise. And for me, that image speaks beautifully to the solstice. The throne is also a threshold, and that crown becomes a turning point because the height of light contains the seed of descent. And we can also look at the Norse myth of Balder, the radiant and beloved one, shining beautiful, almost untouchable, and yet his story turns through the smallest overlooked thing, mistletoe. And it's dismissed as harmless, but it becomes the means of Balder's death. So it's not directly a solstice myth in the historical sense, but symbolically it carries the same pattern, that brightness, innocence, radiance, and hidden fragility or vulnerability within the light. At the height of brightness, something small and shadowed has got power. The overlooked thing matters. So this is where the solstice becomes psychologically rich. The light reveals, but it's also exposing. So when things are illumined, we see what's grown and flourished and what's ready to be celebrated. But we can also see what's been neglected or pushed to the edge, or what it is that's been hidden under the brightness of activity, productivity, or outward growth and expression. The solstice asks us to stand in the full light and be honest with what is ripening, what's fading, and what is beginning to turn here. Then astrologically, this moment becomes even more potent because the June solstice is the sun's ingress into Cancer. And 0 degrees of Cancer, we enter one of the great cardinal thresholds of the year. Cancer and Capricorn form the solstice axis. In the old symbolic imagination, Cancer was understood as the gateway through which the soul descends into matter, while Capricorn was the gateway of ascent, the gateway of the gods, they called it. That symbolism gives the solstice a real metaphysical architecture. It's not only the longest day in one part of the world and the shortest day in the other, it's also a gate Cancer is the sign of the womb, the waters, the mother, the home. It's the sign of the family line and the ancestors. Our emotional body, the need to belong and to be held, that need for protection. Cancer's the place where life becomes intimate. It's where spirit takes on memory, blood, feeling, history and vulnerability. And if we think of Cancer as the gateway of the soul into matter, then this is a sign of descent into life. It's the soul entering the waters of incarnation. Opposite Cancer is Capricorn, and that's a sign of stone and mountain, of time and structure. It's a sign of law, responsibility, endurance. It's that long ascent. It's the picture of the goat climbing. And it's the bones of things, the shaping force that gives form to life. As the gateway of the gods, Capricorn speaks of return, ascent, maturity, consequence, and the movement back towards spirit through the discipline of time. So at the solstice, we're standing between those two gates. Cancer's opening the way into life, into the body and feeling, belonging, into the waters of origin. And Capricorn stands opposite as the path of return. It's the mountain, the structure, law, that long journey back to the gods. Descent and ascent are held together, birth and return. And the womb and mountain, water and stone, all of them are held together. And this links back to the Earth's tilt in a really beautiful way here. The physical Earth is holding a polarity between hemispheres, and the astrological axis is holding a polarity between gates. So we have the above and below, body and spirit, matter and meaning, light and dark, descent and ascent. And in this way, for me, the solstice becomes a hinge between worlds. And this year in the chart, there's another layer. That sun at 0 degrees of Cancer at the solstice is forming a sextile to Chiron, newly ingressed into Taurus, and that stands at 0 degrees and 3 minutes. This is really important, this. The sun crosses the gate of Cancer and the gate of the soul entering matter, and immediately it's speaking to Chiron in Taurus. And Chiron has only just entered this Venus-ruled earth sign. So the solstice gate is connected to a new story around the wound and the medicine of Taurus. Taurus is the body in the land. It's connected with food, soil, shelter. It's also connected with money, value, touch, fertility. It's about pleasure, simplicity, rhythm, and survival. Taurus is the felt sense of being alive in matter, and that taste of the food, that weight of our bodies, the ground under our feet, the steadiness of our breath, and the beauty in the natural world is the need for safety and the question of enough. With Chiron newly in Taurus, we begin a long encounter with the wound of embodiment. And this can speak to the places where being in a body hurts us. Those places where survival feels or has felt uncertain. The places where we've struggled with money and food, worth and safety, touch and pleasure, beauty, aging, scarcity or belonging. So it can speak to the wounds around the earth itself, around our relationship with land, nature, resources and the living world. It can speak to the ways we've become disconnected from slowness and rhythm, from our bodies knowing, and from the simple truth of just being here. And because this is Chiron, the wound and the medicine are intertwined. Chiron often asks us to approach the place of pain with humility. That wound might not be something that we can fix in a clean, heroic way, but it can become a place of wisdom, limitation, tenderness, service, craft. It can be a place of compassion and deepened humanity. In Taurus, the medicine might be found through the same realm as the wound, through the body and food, rest and touch, through beauty, through nature. It can come through song and working with the hands and honouring limits. It might come from rebuilding a sense of value, slowly and honestly. The sextile from the sun suggests an opening. It's like a doorway of cooperation. The Cancer sun is asking us, enter life, enter feeling and memory, the waters of incarnation. And Chiron in Taurus is replying, enter the body as well and the earth. Enter those places where matter has wounded you. Enter the places where the body carries grief, need, hunger, fear or longing. But most of all, enter them with care. And this is where the solstice is more than a celebration of light for me. It becomes a meditation on incarnation. At the height of light, the chart is not going to lift us away from the world. It's drawing attention to the body and the earth. So as the light reaches its peak and touches Chiron in Taurus, illuminating the wound of matter and survival and value and being embodied, that solstice gate is opening and we're invited to enter matter more consciously. And what does it mean to be here more fully or to live in the body with more tenderness? What does it mean to us to stop treating the body as a problem to manage or a project to improve or an inconvenience to override or transcend? And also, what does it mean to us to relate to the earth as a living presence, as kin, ground, as the place where our soul takes form? This is where Cancer and Taurus speak so beautifully together. Cancer brings those waters of belonging and memory, care and protection. And Taurus is bringing the body, the land, the senses and the need for steadiness. So together through this sextile, they suggest that healing might begin with simple embodied forms of care. Our food and rest, shelter, touch, rhythm and beauty. It might begin in the garden, in our breath, in our voices and our hands, in the ability to feel safe enough to soften. And yet Chiron reminds us that this might not be simple for everyone. Embodiment isn't always experienced as ease. For many of us, the body is where trauma has been held and it can carry pain and illness, aging. Our bodies can carry shame, hunger, exhaustion, grief. Our bodies can certainly carry limitation. And so the material world may be bound up with survival anxiety. We might have fear of scarcity. There's class, work, money, insecurity. And so to speak of embodiment honestly, we have to include the wound. We have to include the difficulty of being here, alive. That for me is part of the depth of this solstice. The sun at the gate of Cancer is saying come into life and feel nourished. And Chiron in Taurus is asking us to notice where nourishment has been wounded, where safety's been missing and where we've abandoned our bodies. It's also asking us to notice where the earth has been treated as a resource instead of a living ground. Chiron in Taurus is also asking us to notice where beauty, pleasure and enoughness have become complicated for us. And then we've got the question, how do we return? How do we return to the body without forcing it? Or to the earth without romanticising it? How do we return into matter with reverence, patience and honesty and allow the solstice light to illuminate the places where we're being asked to live more fully, simply and truthfully? I think this is where the ancient solstice rituals have got so much to teach us. The fire and flowers, herbs, stones, water, the songs, the gathering and feasting, watching the sunrise. These weren't soulless rituals and practices. They belong to the body and the senses. They're ways of saying, I'm here. I'm part of the turning. My body belongs to Earth. And my life is held within a larger rhythm. And I think our ancestors knew that, and which was why they marked the solstice from that knowing. The turning of the sun was more than something to observe, it was something to participate in. So lighting the fire was to answer to the sun. And they honoured the blooming of the land by gathering flowers. To stand at dawn for our ancestors was to place the human body inside cosmic timing. And marking the turning was remembering, and can be remembering for us, that our lives are not separate from the great movements of the earth and sky. This solstice, the invitation is to hold that whole pattern, the whole of the pattern. The earth tilts. One half of the world receives the longest day, the other the longest night. The light reaches its crown and the dark begins its slow return. The sun enters Cancer and the gate of the soul into matter, while Capricorn stands opposite as the gate of ascent and return. And Chiron, newly in Taurus, receives the sun by sextile, drawing our attention to the body, the earth, the wound of embodiment, and the medicine that can be found through matter itself. This is a solstice of polarity, incarnation, and return. It's asking us to notice where we're blooming and withdrawing, where we're full of light and where the dark's quietly rising in us. It's asking us to look at where things have reached a peak and where the next turning is already beginning. So to consider our relationship with the body in safety, with nourishment and value, with the earth beneath us. It's asking us to become more conscious of being here. And this isn't an escape from spirit or a fall from some pure place of light. It's as mystery in itself. Soul entering matter, spirit taking body, light touching earth, and the wound becoming a place where we learn a different kind of wisdom. At the summer solstice, the sun stands at the threshold. The day's long, the light's strong, and the dark is already present. And it isn't an enemy of the light, it's its companion in the turning. The earth leans toward and away at the same time. The hemispheres hold opposite truths. Cancer and Capricorn gates open across the zodiac. Chiron in Taurus is reminding us that incarnation is tender, physical, beautiful, and oftentimes really painful. So reflections for this solstice are simple. We can ask ourselves where the light is at its peak in our lives and where is that dark beginning to rise. We can ask what is needing to be embodied rather than just mentally understood, and where has matter, body, earth, safety or worth become a wound for us. So what small, steady Taurus medicine might help us enter life more consciously? And as we move through this solstice, perhaps we can remember that the mystery is in the tilt. The earth doesn't stand upright and fixed, it leans, inclines and turns. And because it turns, we have seasons, cycles. There are beginnings and endings. There's light and dark, growth and rest, bloom and descent. And we are part of that. Our bodies, wounds, our longing for the light, our need for darkness are all part of that. The summer solstice is the crown of light, and it's also that first whisper of return. It's the gate of the soul into matter. And this year, with Chiron newly in Taurus, it's asking us to meet matter with greater reverence. And we can do that by meeting our bodies with tenderness and meeting the earth as the place where the sacred is not somewhere else, but here, underfoot, in our breath and hunger, in the beauty of the landscape, in our grief and our touch, and in the slow turning of the year. Take a little bit of time around the solstice to step outside and feel the ground beneath your feet, to notice the light and the shadows, and simply just mark the turning in your own way. The ancient people's needs to honour these thresholds still is really alive within us. We're still creatures of earth and sky, and we are still learning how to belong to the turning. And that is what I have for you. Thank you for being here, and I'll be back on Monday with the broader picture of the sky. And until then, I invite you to be tender with yourselves. Be honest with what is surfacing and listen carefully for what is alive at depth. Have a restful weekend, and I will see you on the next one.